Welcome to Campfire Wisdom. Grab a seat around the fire and tell us your story.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Campfire Wisdom, coming to you live from the hills of Rancho, Cucamonga. And today we're going to talk a little bit about one of my favorite subjects, grass and sleeping bags, and making some recommendations on that, and also just kind of going through the motions on a few things relative to sleeping bags, and actually kind of discovered something that I think might be something useful for all of you who are trying to get out more often. So let's talk a little bit about the best grass. A couple weeks ago, my buddy Alex and I were out in the Mojave National Preserve, and we were cruising around. We were thinking, there's a lot of cows out there, and they're all, walking around just eating some of the sagebrush and trying to find some of the grass out there. And there's not a ton of grass. It is a desert after all. It's pretty dry up there. And just, feeling bad for the cows, saying, gosh, they don't have that lush green grass from like the Midwest. Ohio grass, I think, is what Alex said. He's from Ohio. So he said they don't have access to that sweet Ohio grass. But then as we were thinking about it, and it kind of came up, what if southwestern grass, that dry, maybe it's a little bit yellow, it's not always green, maybe that is like the most delicious grass in the world. So what if cows in Ohio long for the days when they can be shipped out to the Southwest to get a taste of that delicious Southwest grass? So it's kind of a good conversation relative to perspective, because sometimes our perception about things is like, oh man, I bet you that green grass from Ohio is just dripping wet, it's juicy, it's succulent, the cows can graze on it for days, it's amazing. But it is quite possible that cows actually would prefer the grass out here. It's dry, it's less to chew, it's just a little more, crunchy. Maybe they like the texture better. So we shouldn't always think that in our frame of mind that what we think is best is always best. Maybe it's not. So just a little anecdotal conversation there. So who has the best grass? I don't know. Someday if we can ever speak with cows or any other kind of livestock, we could ask them and find that out. But back to business on sleeping bags. Everybody who wants to be outside more often needs to have a sleeping bag, right? So what's the best way to essentially start a commitment is to, obviously, for me, in my opinion, and maybe you'll see it my way, is invest in yourself. So a lot of times, if you buy a gym membership, it's really easy not to go or be lazy and whatnot. But if you buy a gym membership and buy supplements, or if you buy a gym membership, buy supplements, and pay for a trainer, you're more likely to go because you're investing in that. You're investing in the process. You're investing in the goal at the end. So maybe I'm going to position this. The first step could be a sleeping bag. And here's why a sleeping bag would be a good investment. A, you can sleep in it. So let's say, zombie apocalypse came and you had to hit the road, you would have a sleeping bag to sleep in so you wouldn't be cold. Second off, if you get in a fight with your significant other and you are no longer welcome to sleep in the bed, you can sleep outside and you don't have to worry about which blanket are you going to take and whatnot. You just grab your sleeping bag. Okay, that's number two. Number three, you can put that in your car and you always have a sleeping bag with you, and that could be very valuable if you're stuck in your car, but also it's just a reminder to yourself to say, oh yeah, I want to get out more. I want to do this. And maybe one of those spontaneous nights where you do find yourself meeting friends out in the middle of nowhere, you could sleep in your car in your sleeping bag and be comfortable. So that's going to be my recommendation. Now, that could be any sleeping bag. That could be, Costco has a fantastic Coleman sleeping bag right now for like 20, I think it's like $27. It'll get you down to 40 degrees, so not that bad. And it's not really huge and puffy. And believe you me, you want to have something that can condense down and not take up a lot of space. As some of you know from last week's episode, I was doing some preparation work and, cleaning and getting rid of stuff. Well, this week I went through my little storage area at our townhome, and I have 2 old sleeping bags for my uncle, and they are like old school ones, super puffy. Like I got a compression sack and I could barely get it to fit in the compression sack before I even compressed it, for those of you who know what I'm talking about. So this thing is tight. I'm actually going to use it one last time, one last hurrah. It's like I need to get one more use out of it, and then I'm going to donate it and get something smaller. But those sleeping bags are amazing. They're puffy. They're great for lining the bottom of your sleeping bag, or I'm sorry, the bottom of your tent if you're camping. So that'll keep you warm and also give you a little bit of cushion. But at some point, if it takes up too much space, it's like not really worth it. So I'm getting one more hurrah out of it, and then it's going to get donated. Then I plan on adding a little economical one that I can always keep in my car just to get me by. I have my really good sleeping bag in my place here, and my good sleeping bag is obviously rated at a lower temperature rating so I can be out in a colder environment. So let's talk a little bit about what you want to consider with sleeping bags. So obviously, for those of you getting into this, there's a couple different styles you might want to consider. There's the standard rectangular shape that you probably, when you were a kid, you may have used, when you had sleepovers at your friend's house, you just laid it out in the, TV room, watched movies until you passed out, and all said and done. But not necessarily the warmest. Gives you plenty of room to stretch out and move around, but those corners and the bottom where your feet are can get cold, especially if you're in a cold area. So you might consider a mummy. A mummy bag is going to be basically, think of a mummy and think of what like the sarcophagus of Tutankhamun looks like. Well, it's tapered at your feet, so a little wider in the torso where your shoulders are, and tapers down to a tighter area into the foot box. Usually these days with sleeping bags, there's a bigger foot box, so when your heel's touching the ground, your feet have plenty of room to be, pointed straight up. So that's something to consider. That's going to keep your feet warmer, but the opposite side of it is you don't have as much wiggle room to move around. So yes, you'll be warmer, but it's going to be in a more confined area, and you obviously want to decide. I would say for most camping that you're going to do in California, you're probably fine with a rectangular bag if you like the movement. If you are a person who is oftentimes cold, your feet are oftentimes cold, you don't do well maybe in an environment where it's chilly, then I would say go with the mummy and just suck it up if you're worried about room. But there are a couple things to consider. So with the mummy bag, there are ways to get around that space issue. So for me, I have this bag. It's the Marmot Trestles Elite 20, and I have the long one because I'm tall. I'm 6'2", so I needed a little bit extra space. With the Marmot, it zips down on both sides. So you've got one really long zipper. So if you're laying down on your left side, you got one really long zipper that you get in and out of the sleeping bag with. But the opposite side zips down it's probably about 24 inches, 18 to 24 inches it zips down, so you can fold it down and you could have your arms laying on top of you, or it just gives you almost that feel like you could pull the blanket on top of you. And obviously that would be part of the sleeping bag, that center section. So it gives you a little bit more room in times when you're camping and maybe it's warmer, or if you like to sleep with a lot of clothing and it's cold, you can still get a little bit more upper body movement. But you're not sacrificing the warmth if you do need to zip it all the way up, and you can be bundled in there really tight. So I know I've kind of been singing the praises of Marmot lately. They make that great tungsten tent that I was telling you that my buddy Alex has. It's an amazing tent. And eventually I might go that route because my Eureka tent is amazing and it's lasting forever. But someday I'll have to replace it, And I want to send a shout out to Eureka, by the way. So I reached out to Eureka and was telling them that my bag for the tent was starting to tear. And I was like, hey, I love this tent. It's lasted so long. Can you help me out? I just want to buy a tent bag. Well, they didn't even give me the option to buy the bag. They just sent me one. So, the color didn't match, but who cares? So they just gave me a brand new bag. So shout out to Eureka for that. Thank you. I'll probably have to, be loyal to my dying day now because of the loyalty you've shown me. So thank you for that. But going back to it, Marmot does make a great product. So check that out. As far as sleeping bags, you can go nuts. My previous bag that I had before was a Slumberjack. Those are really nice. But I think what you need to do is find a place where you can actually get into it and lay down. And for that reason, I'm going to suggest you go to REI. REI's return policy is amazing. If you don't like it, if you take it out and it doesn't work for you, you can bring it back. So go there. They have a little flat area where it's off the ground where you can try the mat and your sleeping bag combination together and see if it's going to work out. And they're totally cool with you getting in the sleeping bag. That's the intention. That's what it's there for. So don't feel awkward. Everyone does it. Take advantage of it. It's fantastic. So really, really cool. In addition to sleeping bags, you might also want to consider your pillow option. So keep in mind with that rectangular sleeping bag, you're going to be able to use a wide pillow because it got that big wide opening. If you go with the mummy bag, it's going to basically be tapered around your head, so you're going to need a smaller pillow, something that fits inside of that. Especially on the cold nights, you don't want you to have your head and your neck exposed unless you got like some type of blanket to cover that up and whatnot. So I have not found a really good pillow to go with my mummy bag. Like I have this Cocoon one, which is half padding, half air, but it feels like, I don't know, just not comfortable on my head overall. I don't sleep that well. If you go to your side, it doesn't really, translate that good. And if you're a side sleeper, that's kind of difficult. You essentially need to always be sleeping on your back. So if any of you are out there and have a mummy bag that you have a pillow that you absolutely love, I would love to hear from you. Please let me know. campfirewisdom@gmail.com. Don't forget. With the rectangular bag, like I was saying, you could use any standard pillow, and I'm sure you'd be fine. So if it's cold outside and you like the cold surface of the pillow, hey, fantastic. If you don't like that cold surface, then that's going to be kind of a challenge. You might need a little blanket to kind of fill in the gaps there to use, maybe wrap around your neck, or at least keep the pillow itself warm. So something to consider if you're going to be cold weather camping. Well, that is pretty much it. I think the sleeping bag conversation is kind of fun. It makes you feel like a kid again. That's, I think, part of the excitement about going out and camping and doing all this stuff is you feel like you're a kid building a fort. I don't know. It takes you back to a time when you just did those kind of fun things and they are simple. So the simplicity of it is what I like. You got your bed and you got your tent. So you got the roof over your head. You got your way to stay warm. You're laying down. You're looking up at the stars. It's just perfect. So there's really no way to compare it to other things, especially when you consider that it's accessible. It's not expensive. And last but not least, it gives you a good sense of appreciation of, the outdoors, our land, nature. I don't know. And there's no other better way to ground yourself and just to kind of be present, in my opinion. So I think that's why I'm attracted to this. So go out there, get yourself a sleeping bag, put it in your car, remind yourself that you need to get out and you want to get out more often, and actually do it. So if you guys have any feedback or questions or anything, please send me an email, campfirewisdom@gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Oh, it's only
Campfire Wisdom is brought to you from the hills of Rancho, Cucamonga. We'd like to thank the men and women that protect our national parks and forests. You make this journey possible. Theme music by Sean Cromwell.